Trump, because we always get the sound bites. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to go directly to the source. So this is Trump, the most transparent president of all time. The most transparent president of all time. This is Trump on Air Force One at 2 in the morning last night, telling the press exactly what he thinks about the incoming tariffs and what else is going on inside of the United States of America.
Hello, everybody.
How you doing?
Hi, sir. So I think most of you have seen they released my physical. I did the physical on Friday, and I understand it was a very good report.
Talk to him, Trump.
Perfect. And I took a cognitive exam, and I would challenge anybody here to meet those marks because I have a perfect mark. Were you impressed by that?
I am impressed, and I'm not going to take that test.
But you're not that surprised, right?
Not surprised at all.
You aren't. That's good. 'Cause, I have a lot of respect for you as a reporter. Do you have any questions?
Yes, sir. Could you give us a...
You always have questions.
I always have a question. What is your...
They're going to have to learn how to mute the background noise of the plane somehow because nobody has had this level of access into Trump and him talking directly to the people and taking questions.
message to markets tomorrow? There's some ambiguity or at least some questions about whether there were exceptions or exemptions.
There shouldn't be ambiguity. We have a tremendous country. We have a country that's much richer today than it was a few months ago. We have a financial system that's very respected, and we're going to do great. And we were taken advantage of and ripped off by every country all over the world, almost, just about. They laughed at us. We were run by foolish people, and they took advantage of our country, and we're just not going to let that happen anymore.
In terms
Who
of
else?
the big, beautiful bill,
Right.
when do you expect that to get done? When would
Well,
you want that
I
to
hope
get done?
soon. The big, beautiful bill. It's the big, beautiful tax cuts, really, and regulation cuts and many other things. It passed its first test, as you know, the last couple of weeks, but particularly during last week, where we had a vote. We won in the House, we won in the Senate, and that was a big chunk of it. And now they're going to eventually take, pretty soon, a final vote. And the big, beautiful tax cuts and regulation cuts and all of the other things that are included in there will go into effect. And I think it'll be probably the largest tax cuts in the history of our country.
Yes.
The most comprehensive regulation
We
cuts
need tax cuts.
in the history of our country, and many, many other things, including border wall money. We built 571 miles of wall, but now we can add to it. As you know, we've just concluded a period of time where the border was the most secure it's been in the history of our country. We're very proud of that. And the other week, a couple of weeks ago, last week actually, 5 people came in, 5. And under Biden, it was 500,000 people came in. What they've done to our country should never be forgotten. Never be forgotten. What they've done, and that the news hasn't reported it correctly, is a disgrace. But what they've done to our country to allow these millions and millions of people in from prisons and mental institutions and state asylums should never be forgotten. Because we're going to be living with that for a long time. This is tremendous work, tremendous effort. It's one thing, they cause massive inflation, they cause a lot of problems. But what they've done to our border and to our country, you should never forget that. And you should never, as journalists, allow people to forget it. Yeah.
Mr. President, can you talk a little bit about the semiconductor tariff that you posted on Truth Social today? What is the timeline for that? And I believe it was Jameson Greer said today that those will not be negotiable. Once those tariffs are in place, they're non-negotiable. Is that right?
But the tariffs will be in place in the not distant future because, as you know, like we did with steel, like we did with automobiles, like we did with aluminum, which are now fully on, we'll be doing that with semiconductors, with chips, and numerous other things. And that'll take place in the very near future.
And all the things.
That's I think that's a phenomenal threat too, because basically Trump is going line by line. The longer that this tariff war goes on, he's basically going line by line and threatening every single industry inside of China. China is the number one target of this thing. I explained it to y'all last week. They're the number one target because they're the ones that's the biggest offenders of world trade. They've been the ones that have been stealing all of the technology. They're the ones that we've been in an arms race with semiconductor chips. They've been stealing secrets. They didn't steal so much from the United States of America, and they're using all of this stuff to continue to enrich themselves. They've been bad actors of the world. So now, well, I'm going to save that part of it. Let's continue to hear what Trump got to say.
And what we did is we want to uncomplicate it from a lot of companies because that's really where it should be.
Somebody said it earlier. They said, Trump wearing a suit at 2 a.m. on Air Force One. He don't slip, do he? You know, that kind of inspired me too. It did inspire me. I said, you know what? If the president can wear a suit every single day, the only time that you do not see him wearing a suit is when he's golfing. And then he has on a golf shirt because obviously you can't golf in a suit. The only time that you see him not wearing a suit is when he's golfing. Every other time that he's in front of the press, and see, I notice these little details. I pay attention to stuff like that. He don't ever come out unless he got on a suit. Never, ever. Don't matter what time of the day. He's given unprecedented access. This dude he never misses. That's pretty inspiring to me.
Ideally, and we wanted to uncomplicate it from a lot of other companies because we want to make our chips and semiconductors and other things in our country. And I will tell you, another one is pharmaceuticals, drugs and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, he had on a suit at UFC. He sure did have on a suit at UFC. You're right, MJ Avant.
We want to make our drugs in this country. And by placing a tariff on...
Yeah, I'm about to change. I'm about to switch up. 43 is going to be different for me. 43 going to be different for me.
Companies that are not in this country, they're going to move into our country, and we're going to have our drugs made in the United States so that in case of war, in case of whatever, we're not relying on China and various other countries to supply us with drugs, which is not a good idea. And it'll happen very fast. It'll all happen very fast.
Do you know what rate the semiconductor tariff?
I'm going to be announcing it over the next week.
Can you confirm reports that the Social Security Administration has classified thousands of immigrants as dead, even though they're still living?
That's what I hear. I mean, that's what has been reported to me. Dead and also very inaccurately. And from the standpoint of Social Security, it's a horrible thing. From the standpoint of the strength of Social Security, when you take dead people out and all of the people that they're talking about that should not be in there, it's going to make our system much stronger. We're making Social Security stronger. The Democrats are destroying Social Security. Medicare and Medicaid also, yes.
Do you have a reaction to Russia's Palm Sunday attack on Ukraine?
I think it was terrible, and I was told they made a mistake, but I think it's a horrible thing. I think the whole war is a horrible thing. I think the war is, for that war to have started, is an abuse of power. This country would have never allowed that war to have started if I were president. That war is a shame. Millions of people are dead that should be alive. Cities are being destroyed all over Ukraine. The whole culture is gone. Or certainly very severely hurt. You know, the chapels, the churches, the spirals, all of the things that they had in Ukraine were among the most beautiful anywhere in the world. Most of them are knocked down and blown up into a million pieces. But most importantly, you have millions of people dead that shouldn't be dead. Think of it. Think of what a rigged election means. We would have had we wouldn't have had the war in Ukraine. We wouldn't have had the Russia-Ukraine situation. We wouldn't have had October 7th, Israel, the Middle East. We wouldn't have had inflation. We wouldn't have had the most embarrassing day or period in the history of our country. That's Afghanistan. One of the most embarrassing moments in the history of our country, Afghanistan. All of these things wouldn't have taken place. Think of it. We wouldn't have had inflation. But millions of people would be alive except for the fact that the election were rigged, because that war would have never started and Putin never would have started that war.
I think that it's actually a good thing that all of this stuff happened and all of this residual effect, the fallout and stuff. I actually think it's a good thing because I don't believe that we really appreciated Trump in his first term. And I don't think that we would have appreciated him in his second term. And it's also a possibility that Democrats would have been able to seize power after his second term because we wouldn't have had the opportunity to see how great he really is or appreciate him until we got Biden. Until we got Biden and Kamala Harris, there was no way that we was going to truly be able to appreciate him. That's why he won every single swing state. That's why he won the popular vote. Sometimes you got to let the people suffer. Sometimes you got to let people go through things because they won't appreciate you. Trump is saying, well, we would have never had this. I think that it was divine that we did have it.
Okay, any other
When
questions?
you said they made a mistake in the attack, you said they made a mistake. You were told they made a mistake.
No way we
Did you
would
think it was
have.
They
unintentional?
made a mistake. I believe it was. Look, you're going to ask them. This is Biden's war. This is not my war. I've been here for a very short period of time. This is a war that was under Biden. He gave him billions and billions of dollars. He should have never allowed, if he had any brain, which he didn't have and doesn't have, and now it's being proven, he wouldn't have allowed that war to start. I would have absolutely not. That war would never have taken place. But remember this. This is Biden's war. I'm just trying to get it stopped so that we can save a lot of lives. They happen to be Ukrainian and Russian lives. But all I want to do is get it stopped.
Witkoff, sir, did you meet with Mr. Witkoff today? How did?
I did. I met with him, and he had some very good meetings on the Middle East, and he also had good meetings having to do with Russia, Ukraine.
Can you give us an update on Iran?
Well, we're going to be doing it very shortly. Iran also. It was another way. I met with a different group of people in Iran, and we'll be making a decision on Iran very quickly. Yeah, please.
Back on Russia, Ukraine, resolving that war has taken a little longer than you predicted. Can you pinpoint the reasons why?
It's a deeply seated war. And again, it's a war that people didn't expect would start. And in my administration, there was no chance that it would start. And it didn't, by the way. You know.
No. Listen, I am a pretty heavy conservative. One thing that Trump said, I hate to say it, and I'm not sure if he took in all of the factors when he was making his announcement during the campaign trail. One thing that Trump said was he would stop the war. By the time he got into office, he had already been negotiating it, and he would stop it on day one. Now, I'm not saying that it's his fault. I'm not saying that he should be responsible for what happens in a war. Yes, he is correct. Yes, it is Biden's war. Yes, it is Kamala Harris's war. Yes, we have to hold Democrats accountable for new wars during their term. But one thing that Trump did say, he said that he would stop the wars on the first day of him getting inside of office. And so we got to hold him accountable for that. I'm not sure if it's anything that you can hold him accountable for, but that is what he said. He said he would have it done. Now, I think that he was probably a little bit too ambitious. He probably should have said, my goal is to stop Biden's war and to stop it from happening, because it never would have happened if it was under my administration. But I just was looking at over the weekend bombings both in Russia and Ukraine and more people dying. And objective, listen, I promised y'all this year I am going to be objective with my thoughts. I'm not just going to gloss over things that I see and act like it didn't happen or he didn't say it. I largely stand with Trump, and I believe he's doing a phenomenal job in office. But one of the things that he said is that he would end the war and the war will be over on his first day in office. That hasn't happened. I think that he's really working it and trying to be hard up on it, but he just wasn't able to deliver that on the first day in office. Just is what it is.
I went 4 years and it didn't start. People say, oh, well, how do you know? Well, I know because I went 4 years and it didn't start. You would have never had that war. It would have never started. Putin never would have started it. I think, frankly, he had so little respect for Biden that he started it for that reason. And obviously he didn't get along very well with Zelensky or anybody else. And now you have...
Somebody says he's stopping the war. The war won't be stopped until Putin and Zelensky are face to face. Listen, I don't know what the terms is. All I do is I go by what people tell me. And that's what I evaluate things off of. We can deep dive into the nuances of it, but that's what I look at. That's what I go based off of.
Millions of dead people, and those people, every one of them should be alive right now.
Mr. President, are you going to announce tariffs on things like
Lisa says, come on, AD. The nut Zelensky is fighting the stop of his money laundering grift. Perhaps. Perhaps. I have been very critical of Zelensky also. Listen. Y'all could say it and switch it up and try to make it to be whatever it is that you want to make it to be. But I'm telling you, objectively speaking, because I have to be an equal accountability smoke giver, that was what was said. And this is what is done. This is the current state of how things are. Okay, do I believe that he's working fervently on stopping the war? 100%. He said that it would be stopped on his first day in office. That is not true. That's all I'm saying. You can add whatever context is. You can say whatever it is that we want to say, but we have to be objective because nobody is above criticism. Nobody is above evaluation. Nobody is above listening to what they say and say, hey, listen, did you say, okay, cool. Well, we got to make adjustments. Okay, well, that means we got to acknowledge that that wasn't true, right? Nobody is above criticism. Nobody.
iPhones, tablets?
Well, that's going to be announced very soon, and we'll be discussing it. But we'll also talk to companies. You know, you have to show a certain flexibility. Nobody should be so rigid. You have to have a certain flexibility. And we're doing really well, and financially our country is going to be stronger than
I agree,
ever.
Matthew.
So some products there's flexibility for some products?
For some products, yeah, maybe.
Can you say what times?
No, I'll be announcing it in the not too distant future, but it's going to be separately announced.
Mr. President, do you have any reaction to...
Very much like if you look, automobiles, we have a tariff. Nobody's complaining about it. Went through the process, we have the tariff. Steel, aluminum, and some other things. So, and by the way, our country is taking in billions and billions of dollars on those tariffs. Billions of dollars. And maybe almost as importantly, or maybe more importantly, automobile companies, steel companies and factories, and aluminum companies and factories are opening up in our country. But we're taking in billions of dollars on just those three categories.
Speaking of steel, can you talk about your conversations with Nippon Steel and what?
Yeah, we're talking about different things, but I think that the United States Steel, one of the great companies.
Antoine Johnson says, Anton, you actually thought he was going to stop at day one. There's something MSNBC would bring up. I didn't think that he would stop it on day one. I thought that it was an ambitious thing that he would say. I was, my thing was, well, if he was able to get it done on day one, then that was awesome. I'm not an emotional voter. I vote based off of logic. My goal is to stop the wars, to make America great again. And I look at the policies, I look at the executive orders, and then I call a spade a spade. It's not whether or not it's one thing that one politician said. It's the overall premise of how they were going to preside over the United States of America. And because I am an objective person and I am looking to be more objective every single day, I think that he's working very, very hard on stopping a war. I think it's more complicated than he anticipated. Because, again, you can't necessarily control two other countries or two other nations, especially some that refuse to turn off the spigot when it comes to the money that's coming into them. But, again, I just think that you got to be objective and you just got to call it is what it is.